Hi, Dr. Michelle here of Secrets of Life and Death. Are you holding yourself back from living your true, authentic purpose and passion because of fear of rejection? Well, if yes, you're not alone. But let's start at the beginning and understand why you may be allowing yourself to hold back. You are brilliant. We are all brilliant. We come into this world as brilliant beings with our own unique gifts, talents, and purpose. We are a piece of that divine brilliance. And we have a mission. And we come into this three-dimensional plane and into these bodies. They're great, aren't they? Wonderful. They grow, they are mobile, they are sensuous, they're intelligent, they're self-healing. They're pretty amazing. However, they have their own agenda. Hi, thank you for joining, Carol. Good to see you. So these bodies have their own agenda, and that is to keep, one of the main ones, besides procreation, is to keep you alive. The body wants to protect itself and survive. All those billions of cells in your body are all trying to work towards your survival. And here's the rub. You come into these bodies, not full-blown, full-grown. Hi, Alco, thank you for joining. You come into these bodies, they're not full-grown, they're tiny little babies. Hardly any skills, dependent upon other people, primarily your parents or caregivers. And human beings are complex. It's great to have food and clothing and shelter and safety and enough money to make sure that you have your needs met. But one of the most important things that human beings need is love. We are wired to bond with each other, and so we need that love to feel safe, to feel valuable, to be ourselves. Unfortunately, most of our parents did not get a training manual or a user's manual or guide to deal with us. And they did their parenting based on the parenting that they experienced as children themselves. And I have to tell you, in my own experience, my parents had way worse childhoods than I did. So what happened to me is that I didn't bond with my mother. She already had 2 children. I don't think she knew a lot about love. Her mother was very cold and detached. And so I bonded with my father. And for the first 2 years, I was in heaven. But he was in the military and he got transferred to Japan. And in the time that we were separated, I lost my trust in him, in myself, in my brilliance, in the universe. And I decided that the only way to get what I needed, and that was love, was attention, was stroking, was to become a people pleaser. This is one of the most difficult patterns that children develop because you get really successful. I got really good at sussing out what my teachers wanted. And I got really good grades, National Honor Society, Phi Beta Kappa in college, one of 2 graduate students to get my PhD. The problem with these childhood patterns is that they enable you to survive in your childhood, but they hold you back from fulfilling your mission, from living your purpose. What happened to me? I got my first professorship at a small Midwestern college. And I followed my formula of people-pleasing, and I joined a faculty committee, and I taught new classes and night classes and adult ed classes. I even coached the women's cross-country team. And 1.5 years into my 2-year contract, I got a letter from the dean saying that they were only going to renew my contract for 1 terminal year. I was I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it. I had done everything. How could they not renew my contract? How could they do this to me? I got depressed, I got sick, and I ran away. And after that, instead of changing my people-pleasing pattern, because after all, it had worked for me for, over 20 years, I decided to take jobs where the bosses wanted me or needed me more than I needed them. Later, I only took temp jobs because I hated rejection. We are wired to hate rejection. We are wired to hate rejection because we are social creatures, social animals, and we want to feel the encouragement. We need the encouragement and support of other human beings. We do better in community. And back in the way, way, way long time ago, hi, thank you for joining. Back in the way, way long time ago, being banished by your community, being rejected by your community really did mean death. You could not survive without your tribe. So this is wired into your system. And my response to rejection was to just make myself smaller. And this happened not only in work, but later on, a number of years down the road, when my husband left me. Well, I had tamped down my emotions. I'm sure that had something to do with it. And partly he was going through his own issues of rejection. He'd lost his job. So he left me for another woman. My response? Become smaller. Oh, I don't want to be involved in relationships anymore. I joined a spiritual community where relationships don't matter, where the only relationship that matters is with the divine. And it was uplifting, and it made me detached. It actually opened my heart at the same time, but it caused me to live a life that was small. I settled for less. I settled for no relationships or limited relationships, and I was always doing the spiritual work, and I was not really developing my work capacity, my brilliance, why I was here. So here are some of the ways in which we deal with our fear of rejection. We have this mission. I didn't even know I had a mission. I was so busy out there pleasing everybody out there that I didn't even know that there was any mission or anything to think about. And how many people go through their lives not thinking, not ever reflecting, because they're so busy pleasing others. Now, actually, our brilliance, our spirit, wants us to fulfill our mission. And I think in my case, my higher self threw a lot of monkey wrenches into my progress. The first one being losing the job, the second one losing my husband, trying to wake me up. And I kept on going back. So when I joined the spiritual community, I actually just transferred all of my allegiances to my teacher, my spiritual teacher, and wanted him to approve of me, just like I wanted my parents to approve of me, just like I wanted my boss to approve of me. Only he wasn't having any of it. He was a very, very strict teacher. And he kept on teaching me lesson after lesson after lesson. And the last lesson, he was Middle Eastern, and he had all of us, all the women, dancing, Middle Eastern dance. And I always wanted to be a dancer, but I was stiff as a board. And I would do all the videography. I would videotape the shows so that we actually had tapes of the performances, and they were amazing. They were gorgeous, all these veils and lovely, beautiful dancers. And although I had a beautiful body, I was stiff. And I was stiff. And here's an interesting thing, is that when we hold ourselves back, we hold ourselves back with muscular energy. And so part of my stiffness and lack of fluidity had to do with being afraid. That's what happens when you're afraid, is that you tense up all your muscles prepared to fight, flee, or freeze. And so I was an awkward dancer. But I worked on it gradually over time. And once in a while, he would allow me to be in the dance performances. So one time we were in New York, and he wanted me to come and videotape the performance at this school auditorium. And I came and I asked him, do you want me to dance? Because I'd been dancing in the other shows. And he said, well, you could dance. So I got all dressed up in my belly dance costume, and I went out into this freezing cold auditorium and videotaped for 2 hours. And I started to really feel hurt that I had been forgotten. My teacher was supposed to send somebody out to replace me. Nobody came, and nobody came, and nobody came. Finally, when all the dancers had danced and were even doing a second round of dancing, he sent somebody out to relieve me. And I come on stage, and now I am frozen. You know, I'm already a stiff person, but now I'm totally frozen. And I get up there, and my heart is broken. And the tears are like welling up inside, and I get out to dance, and I can't dance. And afterwards, I was holding all those emotions in. And eventually they broke, and I released all that emotion. And I made the decision that I would no longer seek his approval, that I would dance because it was important to me. This was the first step in my transformation. And I have to believe that both my spirit and my teacher were all in conspiracy to make sure that I woke up. So I did wake up. And soon after, I also made a decision not to settle for broken, emotionally challenged men who could only give me thimbles full of love. And I wrote down descriptions of what it was that I wanted in my life in terms of a partner. And I said, I'm ready. I like the spiritual work, but I'm also after more than that. And I went to the summer retreat, and within 2 weeks, my current husband showed up. And I was ready for love. Well, not quite. I actually had to do a lot of emotional healing because that rejection had put poison into my body and had made it difficult for me to trust myself or anybody else. So I realized that if I didn't do that, I was going to lose this relationship. And that vision of a real, true, intimate relationship was the motivation. It was that vision that was the motivation that inspired me to do the work. And I'm happy to report that I've been in this relationship for over 22 years. Hi, thank you for joining. So I've been in this relationship. It is possible. It is possible to get over that rejection. So here's some of the things that we do that help us to avoid the rejection, but at the same time end up avoiding living our purpose and mission. So one of them is that you create a vision that is impossible. And so, you fail. And so you say, well, it's not possible. I can't do it. So that's one approach. Another approach is to reject the rejecter. And you can see this in some people. The problem is that rejecting the rejecter is still putting the power out there. And you come from a place of actual anger. Sometimes you do that in relationships and you reject the person. That was the problem I was worried about, was that I was going to start rejecting my new boyfriend instead of doing the healing that I needed myself. So when you blame it on other people, then you're not doing the work that you need to empower you. So another way of avoiding this whole issue of living your purpose is to never know what your purpose is and always like, well, that's not it. Well, that's not it. Well, I don't know what my purpose is. I'm looking. I'm still looking. Another way of avoiding living your purpose and also avoiding rejection is that you put other people's needs before your own. So maybe you have children, or you have a husband, or you have parents, and they want you, hi, thanks for joining, they need you to do something, and so, oh, I never have time. Or you may actually avoid it by just being busy all the time, which was what I did for a long time. I was so busy, I never even knew that I had a purpose or there was anything I should do. And then giving up, so you try, and it's too hard, and you hate the rejection feels awful, and so you run away, and then you go back to playing small again. So these are all the ways in which we avoid our purpose. Oh, here's another one, mimicking others. So you want to have a formula, a tried and true formula, so that you can succeed. And of course, if somebody's already tried it, I must be able to succeed too. Well, not. Actually, to live your purpose, you need to trust yourself. You need to step into your own authentic gifts and power. And that's where that rejection really comes in, because as children, we were probably rejected for being who we truly are. Maybe a little too noisy, maybe a little too exuberant, maybe a little too selfish, and we would lose the regard of our parents, and we would learn to tamp that down. In my case, I was 2 years old. I tamped myself down before I even knew who I was and just refocused my attention on pleasing others. There are a bunch of other patterns that people use. Not all of them trash your work life. The performer is another form of people pleasing that goes out. This person goes out and performs really well in the work world, but they are so addicted to that approval that they have nothing left. Hi, thank you for joining, Cheryl. So they have nothing left to give in their love relationship. And there are other parts, there are other aspects of your life. And if you put it all into pleasing others, your audience, your bosses, or whatever, at some point, I guarantee you, that brilliance, that higher self is going to throw in a monkey wrench, and you're going to have a wake up. In my case, the wake up was the loss of my mother. Remember, I told you I didn't bond with her, okay? But I still wanted to bond with her. I still cared about her. And my father had died, and 6 months later, my mother was dying of cancer. And I went out to... Hi? Oh, you were too much of a dreamer. Now it's what you love about you. Yes, dreaming is part of living your purpose. If you don't dream, you have no vision. See, I didn't even dream until this moment that I had with my mother. So I went back to help her finish up her business. She was dying. She was dying of cancer. So we're sitting in her studio, and my mother was the poster child. She was the poster child for living your purpose. She was a cartoonist. No, she was a toy designer. She was also a cartoonist, but she was a toy designer. And she and my aunt would go to New York City and sell their designs to major toy companies. This was back in the 1960s, so there was a little more flexibility back then for two housewives to come and take New York by storm. For me, I was not impressed because I felt neglected. I felt like I had been abandoned by her. So we're sitting in her studio, and I am being the officious daughter, and I'm going through her papers, and I hand her a piece of paper. It's a photocopy, just a photocopy of one of her designs. I hand it to her and I say, do you need this anymore? Can we throw this out already? And she picks it up and she looks at it and she says, oh, I guess I'll never finish that project. Now, I had just finished 3 months of early childhood healing, or actually it was 13 weeks. And my emotions were newly online, and her words pierced my heart. I was overwhelmed. So instead of holding space for her to explore her death, to explore her regret at not finishing that project, I took the paper back. I said, we don't need to deal with this right now. I thought I was protecting her, but I was protecting me. And that moment of intimacy, the intimacy that I had craved with her all my life, was lost forever. She died 2 weeks later. And her little moment of regret became my big moment of regret. And I will never forget it. The good news is it catalyzed me. It made me realize that if somebody like her could feel regret, what does that say about me? I hadn't even thought about what I wanted to do. And the first idea that came up to me was to make a film on death. I said, wow, this has woken me up. What about the rest of the people out there in the world? We live in a culture which denies death. In fact, I was a little angry. I said, how come I didn't know that death was so powerful? So I did. And I tell you, over those years that it took me, and it took me years to finish not one film, but 3 films on death and transformation. There were many times when I wanted to give up, but that memory of my mother kept me going. So now we get to how do you deal with rejection and how do you still move forward with your passion and purpose. The first is to have a really compelling purpose. And I have to say that film idea was pretty compelling. And once I actually started interviewing people, I felt responsible to my interviewees that I had to get that film out for them, or I would have deceived them. And so those 2 things kept me going. And also my husband, who kept on saying to me, you can do it. And rejection did come. I got a devastating critique from somebody I had asked to criticize, to give a testimonial for my film. It was devastating. But that commitment kept me moving on. So that's number 1 in terms of dealing with rejection, is that you have a vision and a goal and a purpose that is more powerful than your fear. That is so pressing, so motivating, that you will face the fear of rejection. And number 2, you need to trust yourself. And that means trust that you're going in the right direction. And there may be some emotional healing that you need to do, and that's the work that I do. I'm a PhD psychosocial analyst who focuses on early childhood emotional wounds. Oftentimes I work with people who come to me after the loss of a loved one, because the loss is connected to earlier losses, and the response is dictated by those early losses. And so it's an opening, a crack, a motivation that enables people to do the work. And there is work. And I know there is a lot of stuff out there on the internet, in coaching programs, about all you need to do is change your mindset, envision, blah, blah, blah. My experience, you have to deal with the emotions. You have to release them. They are actually trapped in the cells in your body. And if you do not release them, they affect your health. So that's why when I talk about the work that I do, which is second chance, from loss to success in health, wealth, and love, is yes, health. When you are not living your purpose, when you're holding yourself back, when you're denying your feelings, when you're spending all your time working all the time, or maybe you self-soothe through drinking or drugs or TV, workaholism, you're affecting your health. So when you live your purpose, you can also affect your health. You need balance. You need balance. So what have I said? The first one is to have a compelling vision. The second one is to have the tools to handle when you get rejected, which, hi, thank you for joining, you will experience, because people are afraid of powerful people. And people who knew you from the past get their own emotions triggered if you start to succeed. It scares them, because then they say, oh, what about me? Maybe I'm supposed to do this and I don't want to do it. So they try and pull you back. I remember one of my coaches describing it as like being in a bucket of crabs. I don't know if you know this, but in a bucket of crabs, if one of the crabs tries to crawl out, the other crabs pull them back. So you actually need not only a vision, but you need a community that's going to support you. And part of that community I encourage you to have is a mentor. Somebody who can show you that it's possible. Because otherwise your inner child is going to say, hey, what are you, crazy? It didn't work when we were children. Why do you think it's going to work now? You need to have somebody who embodies that vision of possibility. But you don't want to clone her or him. You want to develop your own gifts. And that's the work I do with my clients, is I help them to identify their own gifts. One of my clients right now has been invited by her husband to help him in his business of healing people. Now, she is a natural healer, and he keeps on signing her up for all these online courses, and she feels intimidated and she feels overwhelmed. And I tell her, you have all you need. That's what you need to develop. Your healing ability is huge. She actually healed herself of cancer. Your ability is already powerful. And what I teach my clients is that a lot of the gifts, a lot of the challenges that they had as children developed gifts, developed sensitivities and abilities that you can use if you are a coach or a healer or even an entrepreneur. If you're in the business of helping others, empowering others, then your life experience actually helps you. So that's another tool. Mentorship, community, big vision, tools for when you get triggered by rejection. And that's also what I do. I teach people how, still stalking you. Thank you. She has to jump off for a meeting. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. So what is your passion? What is your purpose? If you don't know, check in the link and schedule an introductory call with me. I can enable you to find out what your mission is in a very short amount of time. It's not complicated. A lot of it is our thoughts and overthinking that distract us, or underneath is really the fear that we're going to make the wrong decision. Actually, I believe that your mission is a work in progress, that it evolves as you evolve, and it maybe starts small and grows big. For me, that works best, is to start small and grow big as you develop in your sense of confidence and your trust in yourself. Let's see if there's anything else. You got to heal your wounds. They're going to get in the way. That little girl or boy inside of you that was hurt as a child is going to scream and yell when you step out of your comfort zone. And your body, which I'm telling you has an arsenal of weapons to pull you back into the bucket. Chemistry and electricity and physiology that can knock you to your knees. So you need the tools and you need the support until you get going. And even after you get going, my experience is you always need somebody in your corner. You always need a coach, because you are always developing new and more powerful skills. I start with the inner wounds and empowerment. I have taken tons of coaching courses out there and worked with coaches that provide you with the promised formula. the most important ingredient of that formula is you, is your vision, your honesty, your trust in yourself. And until you have that, you're going to sabotage whatever formula you follow. And even if you are successful in making a lot of money, I have seen so many people in the coaching programs I've taken who do have success in their business, and then they get sick. Or then they have a life-threatening illness, or they have an injury, or they have a devastation in their relationship, and then they are pulled to their knees. You have to have a balance. And that's what I teach, is balance and learning to friend your body so that it isn't sabotaging you. So I hope you enjoyed this training today. Rejection is horrible, and you can live through it. And if you want to know more, please schedule a 15-minute introductory call with me. There is a link in the comment section, or you can private message me. Have an awesome Thursday and be brilliant.